welcome to Comically Pedantic, where we take a detailed look at the complicated concepts, characters, and history of comic book culture. I'm your host, Eric L. Chase, and joining me in this episode, as always, is the wonderful Corinne Levy.
Oh, hello!
You and I have been talking for a little bit already here, but I'm curious to hear what your bright spot is for...
Damn it, I was going to ask you first. I was going to be like, haha, surprise, bitch. Damn it, I'll try harder next time. This morning was great. I woke up, I hung out with my cat, and then Max and I went to a brewery, and we just had some beers and some big sandwiches. And sometimes that's all you need in life is a beer and a big sandwich. And I chowed down both of those at like high noon. And it was great. It was a great time. And like the sun was out, so the sun was my literal bright spot because it's been raining all week. I think that's pretty peak for me. Oh my gosh, and I took my cat on a walk in a backpack. I have one of those
Oh,
cat
wow.
backpacks
Yeah.
for like hiking and stuff. So he had his first little go at that. That was exciting. He's such a good boy. But what about you? What was your bright spot?
You know, I think I had a lot of little bright spots over the past, because
Oh, that's
it's
good.
you and I, we've had a weird recording schedule going, just because we both have a lot going on. There's lots of things uh popping in and out, and
Yeah, and I also forget that we release these long after we've recorded them.
yes.
Like Max, while we were driving to the brewery, was like, "Oh, why don't we like listen to a snippet of the Doctor Hurt episode?" And I was like, "This is probably gonna be weird for me, but okay." And you were asking me what my bright spot was, and it was like I I was sad that I hadn't gotten to meet the cat yet. And I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my god, this is like before I had my kitty." It's crazy. And now I have that cat. That's crazy.
Well, what I
Um,
was one of the things I was going to say is I got to meet your cat for the first time
I
in person.
know, right? You
Who
and
and
Austin are like his like unofficial godparents because you helped us find him.
he was so cute. He looks like a kitten. I can't get over he it's not like he looks like a slightly old. He looks like a kitten
He's
that has just been
small.
a little bit bigger, you know?
He's very small. I don't even think he's 10 pounds, which is really funny because I have cats at my parents' house. It's like our family cats. I've grown up with cats my whole life. If you couldn't tell, it's a time. But one of my cats back at my parents' house, his name's Kirby. He's fantastic. I love him so much. He's my other baby boy. But he is 18 pounds. He's like almost 20 pounds, but it's all muscle.
Oh yeah.
So like Kirby could eat Oliver. It's crazy. And now I just have like the smallest pumpkin in the patch in my home. And it's really delightful. I
Well,
love
it's
my
like
cat.
my dog Brownie is about 50 pounds, but he has like no fat on his body. It's just all muscle.
Yeah.
And he's muscle and like the boniest butt, because he wants to sit on you all the time and it always hurts.
Yeah. I'm just convinced that Kirby is constantly cosplaying as Black Panther. Uh, I'm really convinced because he also has like a little white patch on like his little chest and he's got little
Oh
like
yeah.
armpits too. So like I don't know, it's probably like costume embellishments. I don't know. But I think Oliver knows I've been talking about him because I just saw him in the corner and now he's like disappeared. He's like a ghost. He's a
Well,
little pumpkin ghost.
a couple of the other things I was going to mention, I got to see a lot of my friends, including you. We had
Yeah,
a
we're friends in
Twilight.
real life.
Yeah, I know. We had a
Right.
Twilight watch party, and then we got to hang out and play games with you a couple days after that.
Yeah.
Uh, a couple of weeks ago, two of my friends got married. It was really fun to see that. So there's just a lot actually going on.
I know you got to sprinkle all the bright spots everywhere.
It was so much fun, and
That's fun.
that was actually when I got sick and we had to postpone recording. The
Yeah.
first thing that I remember thinking, like, my bright spot is going to be that I got to see my two friends, Phil and Carly. Hello, Phil and Carly. I got to see them actually get married, which is wonderful because they're both amazing people. And I have told Phil more times than I can count that Carly is the best thing that has ever happened to him because she is a
Aw.
sweetheart. And it's just fun to see them actually like get married and see
Yeah.
them live their lives now, you know? I mean, they've been living together and whatever, but it's slightly different, you know?
It's so fun because you just get it's like it is a day to just celebrate, like, the best things. Like, you're just
And
celebrating people that love each other, and that's so fun.
I am I am a horrible curmudgeon, generally speaking, and I don't like weddings. I think weddings are they tend to be
Who hurt you?
I think they're stuffy and they're boring and I don't care about, you know, there's all of this these things that you have to perform at a wedding and I don't understand why. I think it should be relaxed in a celebration that's more fun.
Yeah,
And it
I
like
think
in
I think you've just been to bad weddings. I think that's all the problem because I
that
love weddings.
that might be the case because Phil and Carly's wedding was the most fun I have had at a wedding probably ever.
Well,
It was
I guess the question is before that, were you only at, like, family weddings? Have you ever gone to, like, a friend's wedding before?
I have gone to
'Cause
friends'
friend
weddings.
weddings are totally different animals than family weddings.
I have gone to friends' weddings. I went to actually a friend of mine and Austin's, more Austin. Austin knew him more, and
Yeah, that's fine.
he was getting married, and the two of them through. So his husband also worked for Montclair State University, and is probably the most over the top person that I have ever met when it comes to like planning these things. So their
Right.
wedding was crazy. It was all like there were lights and they got the Montclair State
Oh,
University
cool.
mascot to come out and like dance with everyone, and everyone
Nice.
had a good time with that. And that was fun. But I knew one of the grooms and I knew like Austin and one other person, and that was it. So I was also in I had something was wrong with like my leg or something, and I was in pain, so I was not happy to be there.
Yeah, I think you just need a couple good, like a couple good weddings, and I think your brain will change. 'Cause they're a lot of fun. They're just a good excuse to, like, eat food, see people that you like, and then cut a rug. It's great.
Well, and I do want to say just in case anyone that was at that wedding is listening, I'm not saying that the wedding was terrible. I'm just saying that I was not enjoying it for other like there. It's not. I'm sure it was great.
Derek's leg was about to fall off. I
I don't remember exactly what was going on. I remember being in pain and complaining to Austin on our way there. I was like, I feel terrible and I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, okay. So
Congrats
we
to all the people that have gotten married.
yeah.
Y'all had cool weddings, and as long as you had fun, that's all that matters. Derek will not be there to Yelp review your wedding. It will be fine.
And you can pretty much just discount anything that I because there's nothing I'm not there's nothing good really going to come out of me reviewing anything unless it's like with Phil and Carly. I was like, oh, this is wonderful. I had lot of fun, but everything leading up to it, I was like, as people are asking me, oh, are you excited? No, I hate weddings. I do not want to go. Like I'm only going because I love Phil and I love Carly. That's it.
Yeah.
But then I had a blast. It was great.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's all that matters.
but enough about weddings. We're here to talk about Spider-Man, and um, I think we have a very interesting storyline to go over today.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm interested to see what happened because I have like some curiosities is like is anything going to connect from like what I read like last time and stuff like that and if it connects to what I read for after this, I'm intrigued. Options.
I do think that as we go forward, they intersect a little bit more. This one, I think, more sets up future stuff more than anything, but I still
Okay.
really liked it, and we'll get into why. So when we last left Peter, he had essentially abandoned trying to live a dual life and instead was living only as the Spider, which I will never not think is funny. After running into his long thought dead clone, who was very much alive, and battling with a bafflingly superpowered psychiatrist, the clone had seemingly died again. Spider Man was left to ponder on how he wanted to continue living his life. At the same time, Mary Jane had left New York in order to patch things up with her family, even though she had no idea where her husband is, and Aunt May is lying in a coma in the hospital. This brings us to the storyline Back from the Edge, where we get to see how this plays out for everyone involved.
This is starting to sound like a bad comic book plot.
We start with Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, number 395, which was written by J.M. DeMatteis, penciled by Mark Bagley, inked by Larry Malstead, colored by Bob Sharon, and lettered by Bill Oakley. This, I actually have this comic book and the next Amazing Spider-Man one.
Oh, so you got
And
to read it, like, in like, by with your bare hands
right.
and not your bare screen.
So I will say I read this for the very first time when I was a teenager and dealing with a lot of depression. So it was interesting because I remember going like, man, this is dark. And
Oh, okay. I was
that
gonna
kind of
say, like, Spider-Man's, like, kind of a good way to go if you're feeling, like, a bit down because it makes life feel more colorful and simpler, I think, sometimes.
sometimes this was a
Sometimes,
weird
but apparently not all the time because, as you said, this one's really dark.
this is a weird era. And I remember very much not thinking that these were great comics, but still wanting to hold on to them. And I think part of why is because as someone who was dealing with a lot of depression, you see Spider Man dealing with a lot of depression and he's not
Right.
doing well. And it kind of felt good to see that, like, look, this fucker is having a hard time of it too.
Yeah.
you know, it was fun. It's not necessarily what I would say is great, but it's better than nothing. I've read a lot of Spider-Man stories where I was like, well, that was not great.
Yeah, I get that.
So we start with this particular story. A drug dealer is making an early morning drug deal when
Oh, no
suddenly,
heist.
just a
Okay.
normal everyday a breakfast drug deal.
Just a classic crack your eggs and have some crack.
You get some, a
Little
crumpet and
crack
some
and crack.
crack. So he's making an early morning drug deal when suddenly the sale is interrupted by the sound of a massive growl. When he goes to check what this is, he finds Puma at the door. So, do you know who the character Puma is?
No,
Great. You're
I'm just thinking of
probably
my cat.
you're probably going to be in the majority on this one. Puma is a character. I'm not going to get too far into it because it doesn't really matter. He's a guy who has the ability to turn into a humanoid puma, and
Oh,
he's kind of a dick. He fights Spider-Man a lot. I like him, but not because I think he's a great character. I just think his design is cool.
he sounds like he's a dickhead Thundercat.
Yeah, he looks like a dickhead Thundercat. But
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's interesting because this particular issue of the comic, Puma doesn't look the way he normally does. He looks way more animalistic. He's got way more cat features than he does human features.
Ah,
And
that's
this is
fun.
the first comic book I ever read with Puma in it. So this is my default how I see the character, even though this is the outlier.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So the drug dealer, turning for reinforcements, finds Nocturne, who has knocked out his associates. Nocturne is a character who was introduced very recently. It's J.M.D. Matthias character. He does this a lot, where he has his little characters he likes to play with, so they come back quite more.
Yeah,
Um,
it sounds like kinda like a little bit of, like, self-promo.
yeah, she looks like a gargoyle. And
Cool.
essentially, she is a character who was changed, I believe, by Baron Zemo into this gargoyle looking creature.
Cool.
And she has some weird empathy powers where she can, like, not only she can feel what you're feeling, but she can make you feel what others feel or what she feels. And that's like
Yeah.
her preferred way of communication throughout this story, which I actually think is way more interesting than what they ever do with it. I think I would read a lot of this character if that's kind of how they interacted with the world.
Based on, like, the very bare bones of this character, it feels very Sandman.
It could be. It's just I think it's like the poor man's version of it. You know what I
The
mean?
poor man Sandman.
Yeah.
Dust
So
boy.
when Puma is about to attack, Nocturne convinces him not to, but she uses her powers to make the drug dealer feel all of the agony that the addicts that he serves feels. So all the different
So she's kind of like a chaotic, like,
yeah.
you know,
She
chaotic
it's
neutral kind of person.
yeah, I get the feeling that, like, she's seen way more of as a villain, but, like, she just kinda does whatever she wants, there's
Right.
not really, like, she doesn't have, from what I can tell, a solid plan for anything. She's just kinda going about.
That's honestly kinda how I feel about Kane
Oh,
at the
yeah.
moment.
That's
Like,
probably going to continue.
he doesn't do a lot at the moment, but sometimes he, like, saves a person by, like, killing other people, and it's very odd, but the gargoyle lady sounds fun.
Well, that's about all that we get to see of her in this scene because it immediately ends, and we cut to Spider-Man, who has returned to Aunt May's home in Forest Hills, Queens. But he doesn't really know why he's there because remember at this time he doesn't live there. He lives with Mary Jane.
Right, yes, because they're married,
Right, and Aunt May is in the hospital, so
because
this
she
is
has a
just an
clone.
empty house. Right. So Peter continues to claim that he only wants to be the Spider, even though the previous story arc had him realize that he didn't want to give up on being Peter. Like that was part of that story arc. Like that's one of the reasons you bring in Ben Riley. He's like, oh hey, this guy wants to be Peter. Well, I don't want to give up on my life, but whatever.
Yeah, it's also just, like, I don't know. Imagine, like, being MJ or Mary Jane, and your husband is just like, "I hate my normal life. I just wanna be the spider." And then she's just like, "Damn, put a lot of work in this relationship myself here, and you just wanna crawl on some walls."
Yeah, it's there
What a kick in the
is.
face.
And the thing that I kept coming back to throughout this, Mary Jane left to go to Pittsburgh. And
Yeah, because she's, like, actively trying to, like, fix crap in her life.
right, and as I will give her shit for leaving at this particular time because like she knows her husband's going through a shitty thing. His mother uh sort of person, mother figure is in a coma. So like things are not going well and she
Right.
leaves to go deal with something that's not really that pressing. But the alternative is to stick around and be like, is my husband coming home? Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of shitty. So Peter makes his way through the house and he gets overcome with emotions and memories. And so he decides to leave and swing away. He just can't handle being there anymore. Cut to Mary Jane in Pittsburgh. She
Cool.
finds herself at her sister's door, unsure of what to do. When she finally musters the courage to ask if she can come in, her sister greets her with open arms, which is kind of nice. She's like, I don't know if I
Yeah.
want to be here, but she gets welcomed anyway.
Well, and it also, like, it sounds like she's not getting really any support in New York, and she lost a lot of support in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
So I feel like, yes, it's shitty to leave, like, Aunt May in a coma, you know?
Right.
But also, it might be one of those things for the character where it reminds them, like, "You know what? Before, like, somebody else ends up in a coma, maybe I need to, like, rebuild some bridges," you know?
Yeah, and I think that's a charitable way of looking at this.
I'm just very much trying to support the one reoccurring female character at this point. I'm like, "She's gotta be okay."
Look, Mary Jane is one of my favorite characters. I just think that at this time in
They're just
writing,
not writing her the best.
they did not know what to do with her. It's crazy to me because she's such an interesting character, and I like
Yeah.
previous to this story there was at least I'm pretty sure it was previous. I've read these all out of order, but I'm pretty sure previous to the story, yeah, previous to this story, there was another one where the entire B plot of it was Mary Jane picked up smoking again. And then at the
Right.
end, the resolution to it is Peter takes her to visit a guy who has cancer in the hospital. And she's like, I'm never going to smoke again. Like, that's the story that they give her.
Oh my god!
It's so weird. It's because
Wait,
she's
why is Peter the worst?
well, and the other thing too is in that particular story, the thing that I thought was more interesting is like Peter's out, he's kidnapped, all this stuff is going on, and Mary Jane's going out to clubs and dancing with other people, and I was like, oh, is she feeling neglected? Is that going to come up as like a a fight there? Nope.
Yeah.
It's just he comes home and it's like that didn't happen. But like there are multiple scenes of her like going to a club and dancing with other people. And look, you should be welcome to do that, but just the way that it was set up in the story
Yeah,
made it seem like
because
a bigger deal than it was.
exactly, and then they probably just didn't let anyone get found out or whatever.
It
That's
was really
so
I thought
weird.
it was going somewhere else. But anyway, we're getting off topic already.
Okay, anyway, she's at her sister's house, and her sister's like, "Oh my god, hi!"
Yeah, so then she
Cool,
goes in and we're going to cut to another scene. Basically what we have set up are the three main plot threads throughout this comic. You
cool,
have Nocturne and Puma who are out doing their thing. Peter going through like unable to deal with his own memories and emotions,
right?
and then Mary Jane
Mary Jane
meeting
sister
her family.
bonding.
Right. So Nocturne is then overcome with a sense of mental anguish and feels like she must seek out the origin of this. She goes and she finds Spider-Man at his old high
Ah,
school. And he's thinking about all of the struggles that he's gone through in his life, particularly the ones he went through while he was in high school.
right.
And during this, he is interrupted by Puma, who attacks him, enraged at seeing Spider Man. And Spider Man then freaks out because, according to everything that I could find, Puma is supposed to be dead at this point. He, I guess they got into a fight and he, like, kind of died. And
Right.
then somehow, in coming back, regressed into a much more animalistic form.
Ah, okay.
So Nocturne then steps in and engages Spider-Man to ask him about like how he's feeling and to tell him that he needs to follow her. She's attracted to the weird mental energy that he's got going on, and
I love
he
that this is the epitome of like, "Oh my gosh, a broken man, I can fix him."
So they make their way to a park where she discusses how she was forcefully changed into the creature that she now is. And using her powers, she mentally links with Spider-Man so that he can see how she found Puma, uh, with no part of him being like a man anymore. He's completely just the Puma, right?
Right.
There's no human in him. And
He's
this,
just a
well,
fool.
this causes Puma to remember fighting Spider Man in the past. And because of this, he attacks Spider Man. But then Nocturne intervenes. But in doing so, she gets clawed by Puma.
Oh no!
So then Spider Man is now pissed off because this person who's trying to connect with him has been injured and he decides to attack Puma. And that's the end of Amazing Spider-Man 395. Like that's everything
Okay.
that has happened.
I like Nocturne. She gives me like Medusa vibes.
Yeah, unfortunately, she does not stick around long in the Spider-Man comics.
Oh,
I
well
looked her up,
that's a shame.
and it's also really hard to find her under this name because as far as I can tell, she's only used this name in a handful of comics, and that's it.
Oh, okay.
So that brings us to Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1, number 218, which was written by Tom DeFalco and Todd DeZago, penciled and inked by Sal Buscema, colored by John Kalis, and lettered by Clem Robbins. Tom DeFalco, remember, is an editor at the time. So this is him
Yes.
writing for the own book.
He pops up. He'll be in the next episode too.
Oh, nice.
Mhm.
So after defeating Puma and watching him flee, Spider-Man decides that he has to help Nocturne. You immediately start with him being like, shit, I have to take care of this person. And as he swings away, he wishes to himself that he could be in two places at once. And as he's doing so, he just narrowly misses running into Ben Reilly. Well, during this, as he's swinging by, Ben is wearing his Scarlet Spider costume. So it's got to be
Oh,
like
that's cool.
somewhat during this time, right? So
Right. Yeah.
deciding that he needs to get Nocturne out of the rain, Peter takes her to the apartment that she had when she was human, and then realizes that it's been taken by other people. Like, she doesn't live there anymore. Other people live in this apartment.
Like, sir, I don't think you realize how quick the renters market is.
Oh my god. Especially in
As
New
soon
York.
as you're out, you're back. Like, someone's in there.
And so this causes Spider-Man to realize that life moves on even if you try to forget about your civilian identities. Like, you can't just like step out and be like, I'm done with this life, and then assume that nobody else will continue living, you know?
Yeah. Again, like, think about your wife, you shithead.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is like Mary Jane doesn't come up much in his thoughts during this time, and that's
That's
surprising
bullshit.
to me. But then we cut to Aunt Anna, who is continuing to be the worst in this era.
Oh, really?
She's telling Aunt May, who is still in a coma, that she has always been strong, and then if she needs to let go, she just should.
Oh my god!
It's like,
Honey,
holy
there can't be
shit.
two ants in this in this story. You
I
gotta
think
go.
I can understand the reason that Aunt Anna is doing the things that she's doing, but like, as someone who is reading a Spider-Man comic, she's doing everything the wrong way.
Yeah, Aunt May is supposed to be the untouchable one.
Right.
Like, I'm upset by the fact that she's just in a coma.
Oh,
'Cause I like
we're
that
gonna
old
have a
lady.
hard time. Trust me, we have some difficult stuff going forward, but
Oh,
I have
great.
trivia on it.
I'm so excited.
When Nocturne wakes up, she shows concern for Puma, like wanting to know where he is, like hoping he's okay, even though he is the reason that she has been injured.
Right.
And because of that, Spider-Man begins to question if even his enemies deserve a second chance. So basically, Spider-Man is learning how to be a good person for some reason. Like, he
Yeah.
can't fathom that like bad people are still people, or just like villainous people are still people. And he also can't fathom that like, if you're not following a particular life, like the people that are attached to that life are like, they're not just going to stop existing just because you don't want to be part of their lives anymore. It's so
Yeah.
weird to me that this is like
It's
how
so
he's
crazy, like, how weirdly selfish, like,
yeah.
this Spider-Man is. And it's so crazy hearing all this after just reading a bunch about Ben Reilly, who's, like, having reasonable, like, existential crises because he's a clone.
Yeah.
But then he's always just like, "Oh my gosh, the civilians, I gotta protect them. Like, these villains are causing a lot of damage. Like, I gotta stop." the damage. Like,
Yeah,
oh my god, it's so crazy.
and it's interesting to me also just because like uh I feel like Peter is smarter than like I understand when you're in a an altered mental state, when you're going through a lot of depression, got a
Yes.
lot of stress, but like I feel like he shouldn't have to relearn these very basic lessons.
Like, I think we've all been at a low point in our life where we definitely are not like, our usual selves. But
Yeah,
I still don't think even at my, like, lowest have I thought that just, like, other people were irrelevant to, like, the world. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Ah, crazy.
The next scene, though, takes place in Pittsburgh, where Mary Jane apologizes to her sister for leaving them years earlier. Her sister is really understanding about all this and even explains that she's forgiven their father as well and that he has been trying to become a better person. So it's nice to see that Mary Jane is actually like doing something to connect with her family, and it's nice to see that like her asshole dad that we've been introduced to in previous comics
Mhm.
is isn't just the asshole. Like he doesn't stay the asshole. He's um actually growing as a person even when he's not part of the comic.
Well, it seems like it's kind of what they're trying to do is really, like, emphasize that, like, "Hey, there really is no black and white." Like, yeah,
Yeah.
this guy sucked. Like, he was a villain in somebody's eyes, and now he's trying to get better because it's kinda the same lesson that's, like, Peter's learning.
Yeah, and I'm gonna get into the theme more when we wrap everything up at the end. But
Yeah,
I really liked. I was confused as hell when I was reading these collection of stories because I didn't really see where they were going and how they all connected until I finished and went back over it, and I was like, "Oh, this actually is a really interesting way of doing this. It's not how I would have done it, but it's
right.
cool, you know." Uh, so then we cut back to New York where Spider Man and Nocturne go out searching for Puma. But while doing this, Spider Man notices the new Daredevil. Daredevil's like hopping around the city. Now,
Okay,
in a recent story, Matt Murdock had faked his death and decided to continue on as Daredevil while pretending to be someone else. So he just has like a different costume and he's like, I'm not Matt Murdock,
right.
I'm this other dude.
Okay,
Spider-Man thinks about how Daredevil's life was consumed by his dual identity and how he was eventually killed because of his dual identity. And
right.
we'll get into that. We have a lot more on that later.
It sounds like this Daredevil is doing exactly what Peter thinks is or thought was ideal to do.
Yes. And it's weird that these are happening around the same time, but it's it's interesting. Well, we'll get into it. When Spider-Man and Nocturne do eventually find Puma, Puma attacks Spider-Man right on sight. He's just furious and wants to rip into him.
Yes.
But while that's happening, we cut back to Mary Jane and her sister, who are comforting MJ's nephew, who has woken from a nightmare. And this really kind of only exists in the comic, I think, to break for two reasons. I think to break up the the action a little bit and give you like a look in it. Like MJ's still doing stuff. And the
Yeah.
other reason I think is because we're really getting into how much family matters to Mary Jane. I think that's the theme they're trying to build around her. I just think they're doing it in a less interesting way.
Yeah.
So then we cut back to the fight between Spider-Man and Puma, where Nocturne interrupts the fight again. This keeps happening, and uh, this time she causes them to feel each other's pain. It's like she like uses her empathic powers for them
Oh.
to understand the other one and the pain that they're both going through.
Yeah. See, at first she was starting to feel like in terms of the fight scenes very much like Scream, like the lady symbiote in the previous thing we talked
Like just
about.
there.
She just keeps popping up and being like, "Someone talk to me." Um, but I kind of like this intrusion more. Just
Yeah.
like forcing people to feel how each other feels. Ugh, maybe that's what my super happy power would be.
So
Understand each other.
it would be an interesting way of being a therapist. I mean, imagine in the Marvel universe how much money you could make as a therapist if you were also a psychic.
Yeah.
Like that's fit.
And
I
if you
think you
lived
could
in the Marvel universe, no one would really care if you had wings, because just, like, I mean,
d- depending
hell,
on if
there's
you
so
were
many other weird shit going on.
depending on if you were a mutant or not, because for whatever reason that matters. They don't
Yeah,
like mutants, but like you can have wings and be like, oh, it was a genetic alteration after I was born. I'm like, oh, that's fine, that's cool then.
yeah. "Oh, it's a body mod, don't worry about
Yeah.
it. Thousands of dollars. Mutants, maybe maybe it's Maybelline. No, they're just born with it. It's fine."
So this interruption where she makes them feel each other's pain. This causes Puma to revert back to human form, and when he does that, he just kind of silently gets up and walks away. He just nopes out. He's done.
He's like,
Uh,
"Oh, no."
yeah. Spider-Man tells Nocturne that she doesn't need to be alone, and that he can have Dr. Kafka from Ravencroft help her. And when she refuses and Spider-Man asks why she won't even try, Nocturne asks him the same question before flying away.
Aha, I like her.
And
She's
that's
a
where
good
we
character.
end this spectacular Spider-Man. And I loved Nocturne, and I thought that was a really interesting way of I wish they did something more interesting with her, because this was a cool weird little introduction, and then as I've never read another comic with her again.
Oh, that's a shame. She seems so cool.
As we move into Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1 number 396, uh you would think that all of what we just covered would be continuing on, but only really the theme does. We now have an entirely different story.
Okay, so he hasn't learned his lesson yet. So he has to have a whole new array of characters to try and teach him this lesson a second time.
Correct.
Maybe
So
third time.
this
Yeah.
comic, as I said, is Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1 396. It was written by J.M.D. Matthias, penciled by Mark Bagley, inked by Larry Melstead, colored by Bob Sharon, and lettered by Bill Oakley. That's the same team that worked on the previous Amazing Spider-Man. So at least we have some consistency here.
Yeah.
I really enjoy when you have at least a team continuing on,
I found that
because
with the next book, like, section that I had read. It was a lot of the
okay,
same people, and I think that's part of the reason why I enjoyed next episode. So,
I think it really helps with the cohesion of the story that you're telling, and getting the themes together, getting the art together, like everyone's kind of working on the same page because you've been working together. You kind of
yeah.
know what you're doing, and it's weird, I think, to see uh uh, uh, to see it switch so much. I think that was part of the problem that we ran into um with Power and Responsibility. You had four different teams, whereas this is really two teams on one story, so there's a lot. It's kind of one big team, you know.
Yes.
So the story starts with Daredevil ambushing some criminals in an alley, demanding to know where to find the supervillain known as the Owl. For those who
Who?
have watched for those who have watched the Daredevil TV show, that's Leland Owlsley. He's the accountant from the first season of Daredevil. But in the comics, he also is kind of owl shaped and can fly.
Okay, is he still an accountant?
I think he was at one point. Yeah. It's a little weird. I think he also has sort of a dual life, and I mean his identity is public, but at least in the TV show, he's not like an out and out supervillain. He's just kind of a shitty. He's a villainous accountant. Whereas here, he's a supervillain who I believe at one point was also an accountant.
Oh, that's cool.
So Daredevil's beating all these people up, and he's like, "Where's the owl? Where's the owl?" And he starts to realize that they don't really know anything, and he's just beating up on people for no reason. Uh, and when he comes to that conclusion, Daredevil announces to Spider-Man that he is aware that the webhead had been following him. So Spider-Man's been in the shadows watching. Daredevil's like, I know you're here. When Spider-Man appears, he says that he has come to talk to a friend. And Daredevil announces that Matt Murdock is dead and Spider-Man is mistaken. But Spidey says that he's followed Daredevil around and he moves just like Matt did. And this is an interesting thing for me because to me, this indicates Spider-Man knows this is really Matt Murdock pretending to be someone else. But like as it goes on, it's kind of treated as like maybe he thinks that, but he doesn't know that. So he keeps kind of going back on maybe it's someone else. But like to start it off with like I've been following you and you act just like this person. It I took it when I first read this as like Spider-Man knows, you know.
Do you think it could be like he knows, but out of respect for Daredevil, he's like playing along with it?
It might be. It's an interesting take I think that they do on this because I at the end of it I was like, does he know? I still don't know if he knows.
Well, honestly, with this Spider-Man, who really knows?
Yeah, he goes back and forth on everything.
He's a wishy-washy boy.
So all meanwhile, the owl is sitting above New York, thinking about his life and what he wants to leave behind before he is met by the Vulture. And for anyone that's
Ah, okay.
okay, anyone that's seen
This
Spider-Man:
is starting to make
Homecoming,
sense now for later. But the Vulture just shows up.
yeah, the Vulture just shows up. He if you've seen Spider-Man: Homecoming, you're kind of used to seeing Michael Keaton, who, as much as he's like an older person, doesn't really look crazy old.
Yeah, so with Spider-Man: Homecoming, I did see that one. That one was in theaters when I went to see it. I watched it with a bunch of friends. It was a fun time. This is part of the reason I'm not the biggest fan of like the MCU because from what I know of the Vulture is a crazy looking bald man with like the fluffy like turtleneck piece and
Yeah.
like very bright costume. And then I love Michael Keaton. I love him so much. He's probably my favorite Batman in
Mhm.
movie times. Um but I'm sad that they just put him in a mech suit, you know.
I actually really liked what they did with the Vulture in that movie because I think it made way more sense.
Like,
Uh,
yes, it made and I know it did, and so please nobody come and yell at me because I understand that it makes sense for the universe and all that stuff. What you don't understand is I don't like the universe and I want it to be what it isn't, which is letting Michael Keaton be absolutely batshit
so
and
and
like be a peak Birdman. Because
th-
they put him in a real Birdman movie, but they didn't let him do a literal as much Bird as I wanted. And I wanted Bird for Spider-Man: Homecoming, and I did not get Bird because it's the MCU. And again, I'm aware that it does not make sense for him to be like that. However, you can't stop my dreams, internet. And that's all I have to say about that.
so this is also going to be a little weird for you, I think. So the Vulture, as you said, is normally like a crazy old bald man wearing what is like a turtleneck, and it just has wings and he can fly for some
Yes.
reason.
Iconic.
Uh, yeah. Uh, in this comic, the Vulture has been de-aged after a recent storyline where he this was this is taking place after the Chameleon's weird plan where he introduces uh kind of robot. I don't know what there's really supposed to be, these like robot versions of Peter's parents, and
Right.
their
Okay.
their life energy was absorbed by the Vulture, and it somehow made him a younger person.
Oh.
So he now has like he's got like hair, he's got like a new costume. He's now like let's go with like in his 30s versus like his what he looks like in his 70s originally. So the Vulture is now DH, and he's become obsessed with abandoning how everyone once saw him, and he wants to create a new life.
Very much like Venom
Right.
previously. How Venom's just like, I'm a psycho, but I want to be a hero now because I'm ashamed of things.
It's also
Uh,
very similar to what Spider-Man's going through, and Daredevil, and to some
yeah.
extent, the Owl. This is what I was saying, where like the theme is interesting because of the way it's weaved in. It's the story doesn't follow. You're not following the same set of characters. You're following a theme along, and I
Yeah,
think
it's
that's
just an anthology of second chances.
yeah. So the Vulture reveals to the Owl that he has a plan for the two of them. He is offering the opportunity to erase his past by easily killing everyone who had previously known him, which I think is fucking insane.
This went from like, yeah, I could see how this connects like kind of like with Spider-Man. This 100% is just Venom vibes all
Yeah.
over again. We're gonna have a shot of like the Vulture on a roof, and there's just gonna be a pile of dead bodies, and some of
This
them might
gets
be
wild.
robbers.
In another part of
Okay.
the city, Spider-Man and Daredevil continue to discuss their situation. Spider-Man is desperate to know how Daredevil managed to bury his past and start all over again.
Mhm.
And Daredevil keeps insisting that he isn't Matt Murdock and takes him to Murdock's grave, where where he was buried.
Yeah.
While there, he states that if he were Murdock, he would tell him to kill Peter and forget that he ever existed. Spider-Man seems unsure of this and tells Daredevil that he wants to stick around and help him hunt down the owl. So this is again, this is going to be like the third story arc. Even though this is technically the same story arc, it's split in two. This is the
Yeah.
third time around
It's a
where
reiteration.
he's just like, "Hey, you need to give up your life," and he's going, "Hey, hold on, wait a minute now." But he still doesn't come to the realization, like,
Well, cause Nocturne was like kind of like, well, reminding him not to. Like, don't quit your whole life, you
yeah,
know?
mhm.
And I think right now, I feel like Spider-Man right now is a bit of like a Pinocchio. Because
I'm gonna
here's
need you to elaborate on
okay. So
that.
so Pinocchio, he's a little boy, okay? Or he wants to
Yeah.
be something. And he's an asshole. Pinocchio sucks. He's
Mhm.
annoying, he's selfish, and he's pretty shitty. Um and then you have like in Pinocchio, you have like the Blue Angel who's kind of just like you should probably get some wise in you. And I feel like that's very Nocturne. Just like not directly telling him what to do, but just being like, perhaps maybe one day you won't be an asshole anymore. Um, and I feel like Daredevil is kind of when you go to like the fantasy island with
I
all
knew
like,
immediately what you were gonna say.
you know,
Yeah.
and he's
With
like, "All
the
right, this
jackass
is what."
kids.
Yeah, with all the jackasses. And I feel like Daredevil is kind of just being like is a bit of the cautionary tale, being like, "I did it, you can do it too."
Mhm.
Um, and then he's gonna turn into a jackass.
Yeah.
Is how this feels. How this feels. And then I'm sure one day he'll stop being a jackass and get eaten by a whale and be fine. Um, but I'm just saying, Spider-Man feels a bit Pinocchio right now,
Okay.
and it's okay.
It
It's okay.
actually kind of fits with where we're going in the story too. I mean, you have to get a uh little abstract with it, but it kind of fits. So
Listen, I can stretch an analogy pretty far if I'm determined enough, and I am an Aries, so according to everybody who likes astrology, I am stubborn enough to get it done.
so Spider-Man seems unsure of what Daredevil's telling him. but he does tell Daredevil that he wants to stick around and help him hunt down the owl.
Okay.
In their new hideout, the Vulture demonstrates his plan to the owl by injecting a man with some sort of fast-acting poison.
Mm.
The owl demands that the Vulture give the man the antidote, but he instead snaps his neck. Like that's
Oh
it. Like
my god.
he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna. Don't worry, I'll fix him," and then he just kills him. Annoyed by this, the owl demands to know his plan. The Vulture explains that he intends to infect a large group of birds and unleash them into the city, which would kill anyone who remembers who the two of them really are. And I just
Wait a
wrote,
minute. Wouldn't that just kill the birds?
I think he's like lacing their talons. I'm pretty sure that's, and they're supposed to attack people. I don't know, but I wrote just a little note at the bottom of this plan. I just wrote, there are so many holes in this plan.
This is also, if it somehow worked, this is my greatest fear. I am afraid of birds.
Oh yeah.
Well, specifically like weird birds. Like chicken, turkey, guinea hen, ostrich, peacock, flamingo. To
Wait,
name,
chickens, really?
yeah,
Oh,
it's
okay.
terrifying. My parents have them. I have a strictly business relationship with them. I do not have I don't love them. I am sad when they pass away only for my mom's sake.
Mhm.
Because I'm like, she likes them. I'm sorry that her things that she likes are gone. Um, no, I'm terrified of them though. It's their faces. I hate their faces so much.
I am terrified of the bigger ones, like the emus and the ostriches and things like
Oh, they're
those.
terrifying too. They're on the list. Don't worry. They're weird. They're terrifying. Like if I was alive during the emu wars,
Oh yeah.
I would not have
Pick up a gun.
straight in the middle. I wouldn't have even given him a chance to go near me. I would have taken care of it for myself. I'd be like, nope, goodbye. Toodaloo. I'm gone.
I I
I'll put
appreciate your
myself in
take
the
on this
sand 6 feet under, thank you.
because I find birds cute, but I also don't. I am terrified of many of them, and it's something about the beaks.
Songbirds are fine. I think songbirds are very pretty and cool. I like birds of prey. Like I like eagles and falcons, and I do like owls. I think they're really cool.
Yeah, owls are pretty
It's
cool.
the weird ones. It's the ones that have like naked faces. You know?
Mhm.
I like
Like a buzzard or
yes, I hate gizzards, I hate wattles, I hate crowns, all of it. I we could have listen, we can have a whole podcast in and of itself of like the reasons I hate and am afraid of these birds. Um, so we don't have to get I'm also afraid of vultures. That's a thing too.
yeah. No, that
So,
checks out.
yeah, so it's truly a journey. So if somehow oh my god, and we used to have a homing pigeon that would bother us at work, and I was afraid of that, like, little shit. I hated him. Everybody else at work loved him. I was like, "Get this bird fucking out of here." It flew into the shed that I was working in one day. I screamed. I hated it so
Wait,
much.
this is the farm?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, this makes a lot more sense. I don't know why I was picturing like I was I was picturing like you sitting at a cubicle and there's this pigeon
Oh my
walking
god.
through.
They're, like, doing the window washing, and it just flies straight through.
I don't know why my brain
Burrs a
went there
hole in my
first.
head. No. And that one's small, but I hated that pigeon. It had, like, a little tough skin. I didn't like it. I hated it. He was an asshole. Did not like that pigeon. Everyone was like, "Oh my god, his name's McFlurry. He's so cute." And I was like, "That is Pidge, and he sucks. Like, get him out of here." He hasn't come around in a while. I know I'm probably gonna be the first suspect, but I'm telling you, I wouldn't come near that pigeon with a 10-foot pole, so I couldn't have done anything to it. I'm too afraid of them. I hate them so much. Anyway, so the vulture wants to unleash a bunch of poisonous birds into the city to kill specifically the people that remember him.
Yeah, and so the owl correctly realizes that this is absolutely fucking insane and wants nothing to do with it. So he
I love
fucks
that.
off. He leaves. He just takes off, and as he's leaving, he's confronted by Daredevil and Spider-Man. But he argues with them and says he's not looking for a fight. Spider-Man is then attacked by one of the Vulture's birds and is immediately knocked out.
Ah,
And yeah, so that sets up kind of where we're going for the next issue. The only thing really left to talk about is Mary Jane is in this comic, but next to nothing of any importance happens. She mostly talks to her sister and thinks about how bad her dad was. That's it. End of Mary Jane's appearance in this comic.
right. Just kind of giving her some like depth, I
Yeah,
guess.
it's they kind of are just like, oh yeah, that thing is still happening, but we didn't write enough of a story to really have her do much.
Right. That's yeah, okay.
But that takes us to Spectacular Spider-Man Volume 1, number 219, which is written by Tom DeFalco and Todd DeZago, penciled by Sal Buscema, inked by Scott Hanna, colored by John Kalis, and lettered by Clem Robbins. Again, the same team as the previous Spectacular Spider-Man. So we get a good flow going, I think, now.
Yeah.
Spider-Man is hallucinating because he was attacked by this poison-clawed bird.
Do we know what kind of bird it was? Because right now I'm only thinking of a poisonous pigeon because it's New York.
It looks like an eagle. So
Okay.
I think it's an eagle.
So they
I
didn't
don't.
like emasculate him by just giving him like the P Dove or something. Oh well, P Dove is a Pokemon. That was fucking stupid and nerdy of me. P
I
Dove
think
is a
it's an
pigeon
eagle.
though. He's a pigeon Pokemon. Love
It's
P Dove.
and the one of the interesting things too is that I pulled up some of the notes from Marvel fandom and they they wrote the infected bird dive bombs Spider-Man,
The infected.
which
You know,
I
now
liked.
I'm just trying to think of like all the different birds that would like run into Peter Parker.
I don't know if you know this, but when they were doing the Spider-Man cartoon from the 90s,
Mhm.
one of the mandates, I don't know if this there some of these were like like disproven to an extent, but I don't know if this is one of them, but one of the ones that was passed around was that they were not allowed to draw birds on the buildings because they didn't want to imply that Spider-Man was like landing on and hurting the birds.
Oh.
It's weird. It's a I like I don't know if that's one of the ones that was actually
I
accurate
think
or if it was.
people also forget that's like birds fly away
Yeah.
when something they're not comfortable with. Like they will fly away. Or if anything, they'll freaking fly at you because they're
Yeah.
aggressive as hell. And honestly, you know what? It's good that they didn't draw birds in that show. Because if little me, already afraid of birds, saw more birds flying at Spider-Man, I'd be like, no, they are super villains. I would, yeah. So honestly, good because it's triggering.
So Spider-Man's hallucinating, but he gets pulled out of it when Daredevil calls him by his real name. Uh, so Spidey refuses to be taken to the hospital and instead wants to go after the owl. And
Okay.
when Daredevil actually catches the owl, he demands to know what his friend has been poisoned with. The Vulture then arrives to help the owl actually escape, but not before Spider-Man is able to put a tracer on one of the, I think it's the owl, one of the villains. When the villains arrive at their hideout, the Vulture reveals that he's already poisoned one of the owl's former business partner. This horrifies the owl, who doesn't really want to murder anyone.
Yeah. He just wants
The,
to be a mean accountant.
yeah, the Vulture then reveals he has an antidote and it can be given to his victim before midnight to save his life. The owl takes the antidote and flies out to go save his former partner's life. So he's out there, like, all right, I'm going to go give the antidote to this dude. Meanwhile, Spider Man brought Daredevil back to his apartment in order to test his blood to see what he was actually poisoned with.
Right.
And noting that Peter has taken his mask off and let another superhero into his apartment, Daredevil points out how cavalier he seems to be about his own secret identity. Peter lets him know that he has too much to worry about right now and can't be bothered to protect his identity with another hero. See, this is one of those moments where I'm like, does he know that that's Matt? Because, like, is he just playing along, or does he really not know?
Yeah.
And when
But
testing
that
his
would
blood,
then be the point to just be like, "Bitch,
it's
I
like,
know
just
you're
drop
Matt." Like,
it.
stop.
Yeah, because, bro, I'm poisoned. Let's drop this
Yeah.
bullshit act. Spidey reveals that he is dying quickly and that they have to find a cure for him, and they have to find it fast. So they go after the owl, but as they get close, the spider tracer that was on him is unintentionally damaged, and Spider-Man can no longer follow it. This doesn't really matter in the slightest, though,
Okay.
because Daredevil just immediately points out that he's able to track them the rest of the way by meditating real hard. He just he sits down and he's like, "Hold on, let me just close my eyes, even though I'm blind, and I'll find him."
Well,
Which is
hey, I mean, like, just because 'cause you're blind doesn't mean that your eyes, like,
that's true.
your eyes can get dry.
This is just one of those weird things where they were like, "Oh no, how are we ever gonna find them?" And then a page later, like, "Anyway." It's
"Oh, we found them.
yeah.
But
So
New York is so big. Oh, they're the
yeah,
block away."
when the heroes actually find the villains, the Vulture releases his birds, which means that they now have to catch them. And
Mhm.
here's the other thing that I think is really funny: there are like 4 birds at most. So the
4
Vulture's
birds
plan,
for all of New York.
yeah, that's his plan.
There's more
Uh,
than 4 boroughs.
right. So
If you
Daredevil,
have to, get a bird per borough.
yeah,
Like, if that's really the minimum that you can do. But if your name is the Vulture and you're working or you were working with someone known as the Owl, like, you should have some pretty good bird networking.
yeah. I
Like,
mean, like,
I had more chickens in my life than those 4 birds.
it's just it's insane to me that it was such a few. Anyway, Daredevil fights the Vulture, and Spidey goes after both the birds and the owl. And when Spider-Man seems unable to catch the last bird, the owl swoops in and kills it, telling the heroes that his debt to Daredevil has been repaid, and he drops the antidote down to Spider-Man. So that debt to Daredevil is from a previous story; it doesn't have anything to do with this one.
Okay.
It's just, you just kind of have to go with it.
Yeah.
Um, but then he drops the antidote down to Spider-Man, which he's supposed to have this antidote to cure his business partner, and then he's like, ah, fuck that, I'm gonna give it to this guy.
And he didn't have, like, 2 of them. It was very
Yeah,
clear he had
he
1.
yes. So he drops it, and Spidey ends up drinking it like immediately. Daredevil then tells Spider-Man that what he needs to do is find the things that mean the most to him and build a life around them. Which is like, okay, you should have said that last issue instead of being like, to kill your previous self and just live this way. And it's also interesting that he's saying this because he's currently not doing that thing either.
Right.
Unless you unless what you think is like the thing that means the most to him is being a superhero, which is kind of weird because I don't that's never been Matt's thing.
Yeah. Bit unclear with that one.
Yeah. So Spidey later tests the antidote that he was given, and he finds that it's just water, and realizes that he will still die, and he will die soon. And
Oh, so the owl didn't actually help him.
well, it's implied that the
Or the
Vulture,
Vulture was lying the whole time.
yes,
So he
and
probably never had an antidote, and he
yeah,
just snapped a guy's neck in half to be like, "There, that's the antidote,
yeah.
punk ass."
So that's the end of Spider-Man's part in the story. He ends with
Okay.
realizing that he is going to die, and
Now, that's interesting. It does make some more sense for what's to come, 'cause there was, like, one panel that was mentioned. Uh, Definitely did not clear up as many answers as I thought.
there's
So, that
there's
was
only one
getting it.
other thing. I separated out Mary Jane's stuff. And really, the only
Sure.
thing you need to know is she confronts her dad, and they both realize that they're both trying to do better with their lives. It's a weird thing where like they're doing well, and then they're not doing well, but really they are. Eh, They both end up realizing they're both trying to do better. So Mary
We're
Jane gets
growing.
on, yeah, Mary
And
Jane
growing
gets on a
is not
plane.
all an incline at once. It's wavy
Right,
and bumpy and messy. Okay,
right.
I think that's fine.
So Mary
Good
Jane
for
hops on a
Mary Jane.
plane, and she's confident that she's started to repair her own family. So she heads back to New York to find her husband, and
Oh, okay, good for her.
that's how we end her part in this story.
You know
And yeah,
what? It's good that she was gone because honestly, she deserves some good. And would Peter really have like let her in on any of this crap? Probably not. He probably would still end up being poisoned in a gut or something. So
um,
I think that's good. What did you think of it like overall as just like
okay,
one
yeah,
story?
I have my what's good, what worked, and what didn't worked
Cool.
notes. So under like what's good and what worked, having these four issues be thematically linked rather than one long narrative, I think is really interesting, and it kind of it approaches Spider-Man's dilemma from two different areas, and I
Yeah.
like that. It felt refreshing to get two short stories that were telling a long thematic story versus reading four issues of one long story. Like it felt way more fast paced and
Right.
fun, you know?
That's cool.
Teaming Spider-Man up with and then putting him against characters that all in some way want to leave their past behind, like that helps to highlight what he's actually wanting out of his own life.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really interesting. Like, you have Puma who doesn't remember his past. You have Nocturne who wants to leave her past. Daredevil who wants to leave his past. You have the Owl who wants to, and the Owl and the Vulture who both are trying to reconcile who they were
Yeah,
and
they're trying to
who they want to
kind of
be.
forget and redeem.
Right.
While I feel like the people in the beginning in this first half were just trying to forget and that's it.
Yeah. I think all of that really works. Like I legitimately was surprised at how much I enjoyed this particular story, especially with the way that it was set up, being so I would like not traditional, you know.
Right. Mhm.
Now, what didn't work is Vulture is fucking insane in this story. His plan makes no sense. He is like, I'm going to put poison on the talons of like these three or four birds, and I'm going to release them all across New York to kill everyone that remembers us, and which will effectively get rid of our previous lives, even though paper trails exist. Like,
Yeah. He's
none
gonna
of it
poison
makes
the
sense.
paper trail.
Yeah.
And if
It's
anything, it's just gonna spark it even worse because
I
there's gonna be some people who didn't remember you, but now this is your first impression of them, is you poisoning people with a bunch of birds.
and I think there is an interesting story to be told with his desire to get rid of his past self, but this was I feel this to me is like, well, I have to write a story quickly. This is his plan.
I thought it was funny, um, but and, like, I probably would have gotten a kick out of it, but
It
I
reads like a Saturday
also
morning cartoon, you know?
yes, I did also just come off of reading, like, Batman Curse of the White Knight, which is
Mhm.
just very, like, serious and, like, so it's really funny to kinda just go to both sides of the spectrum.
And another thing that I think didn't really work that well is Mary Jane's story. Nothing was really fixed. She had a couple of conversations with her family and takes responsibility for walking out on them, but she doesn't highlight that it was perfectly within her right to do so to take care of herself. Like
Yeah,
they're kind of upset that she left to go start a life, but not like no one acknowledges that the reason she left is because they had a very dysfunctional life to begin with. It the
mhm.
whole thing screams that you all need to be in therapy.
Right.
And they're not. Like, they're all doing slightly better, but this also could have been a phone call, you know? Her
Yeah,
entire 4-issue story arc could have been a phone call.
I think arguably yes, but I guess it also, and maybe it's just because they didn't write it the best.
Yeah.
I think depending on the character and the person, there's a magnitude to that that varies depending on how much you want to grow from that relationship. Like, I know for me, there's definitely some people that it's like if I were ever to try and reconcile with someone, that I would feel very compelled to do it in person.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's some people who kind of maybe like, had somewhat of an effect that I no longer speak with, but it's not as much of a priority for me. So maybe be just like, oh yeah, like maybe I'll message you one day.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of depends. And I think it's a shame maybe that they just didn't flesh her out enough to kind of show how important it was for her to be there in person.
Yeah,
Um,
this is another story
yeah.
where I can see this being really good and a great Mary Jane story. It
Yeah.
is unfortunate in that it's taking place, I think, at the wrong time because it shouldn't be happening with Aunt May in a coma, Peter missing, and her shunted off to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree and slightly disagree. Because I think there's some realizations that she maybe could have from like the whole coma situation and how
Mhm.
her marriage is kind of shitty right now.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think
so,
that could
but
have been
again,
written better.
yes, again, I think all of this is under the umbrella of if it could have been written better. Um, but she does, I think I mean, not to spoil for next episode, but like she does become a bit more important. Um, and her coming back kind of adds a bit of like suspense, I will say.
Yeah.
So I
I
think it's also for later like drama.
yeah, I think that the way that this we're stumbling into the Clone Saga in with a bunch of stories that are interesting but not well put together.
It's like they
I,
just needed another like edit.
yeah, I this these all feel like first drafts to me where it's like, oh, that's kind of cool. I kind of like that idea. Maybe let's go back over and flesh this out a bit more
Yeah.
and change some of the stuff that doesn't quite work. If I were to compare this to Sandman, where you have, I just think of the Doll's House,
Oh,
where you're introduced to
yeah.
all of these characters. They're all going through their own emotional issues, and it's like I'm bought in at that point. But
Yeah.
you have these characters who we've been ostensibly involved with in some way for like 30 years at this point,
Yeah.
and I don't really buy it.
Right.
It's so oddly put together, and I think maybe
It's the
oh,
tone, I think.
it's the
Because I
tone.
know,
It's a function of it being a superhero comic too. It's like
yeah.
you have to keep it moving. You have to keep the action going. Whereas like no, you can slow it down and make it you know.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about, like, the movies. Like, not every scene is an action scene at all. Like, there are slow moments, like, and that's what
Yeah.
makes people, like, fall in love with them.
Mhm.
So, it's interesting. Yeah.
The only other thing I was gonna add that I didn't like about the 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 comic was it's not actually a feature of this comic, but
Right.
it's in it is Daredevil's fucking costume. It is god awful in
Oh,
this.
no! What's wrong with it?
It's so it's like gray and he has like these big armored pieces on his shoulders and it's got a big like white patch in the middle. It's so 90s and so
Oh,
awful. I don't know if you've seen it.
No,
Uh,
I haven't. I will look it up while you're explaining it though,
it
because
is
that does sound rough.
it is everything about 90s excess put into Daredevil, which is unfortunate because his red costume is so simple and so evocative. And it feel like they were just adding as many accessories to him as possible to try to make it cool and exciting, and it just looks stupid.
Right. Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan. I don't like gray though. I don't love the color gray. Unless you're gonna
S-
like
I love the
s-
color gray.
I don't like excessive amounts of gray, you know?
So interestingly, I got bored of reading Spider-Man. I didn't want to get too far ahead. My taking a break from Spider-Man involved me reading a lot of the Hulk. I just finished reading Immortal Hulk. It was one of my favorite comics, and it made me want to go back and read Peter David's run on the Hulk because the Immortal Hulk takes a lot from that.
Right.
And Peter David's run literally starts with the Gray Hulk becoming uh more of a thing. It's like
Okay.
when Banner turns, he doesn't turn into the Green Hulk, he turns into the Gray Hulk. I love the Gray Hulk.
Oh,
He's
okay.
my favorite version of that character, except for they give him this story that, like, I know it's iconic and everyone really likes it, but he becomes a bouncer slash enforcer in Las Vegas.
That's
Uh,
fun.
and it's goofy as shit. And it's goofy in a way that's like I had a lot of fun reading it, but I wouldn't it's not what I would it's not what I enjoy about that character. It was just like, "Oh, that's fun."
Yeah.
And I was ready for it to be over long before that was over.
Ah, okay.
But the Gray Hulk is like so, and I think part of why I like it so much is I just think it looks cooler than the Green Hulk. And I
Gotcha.
can't tell you why. I don't
I
know.
don't
It's
know.
just something about that, you know?
Right. I was just oh no. Now the internet's really gonna hate me. I criticized I criticized the mech suit and now it's gonna be this. But I was talking with Max today about like because Henry Cavill is gonna be like doing more Spider-Man
Superman.
stuff. Superman stuff. Oh my god. Ah he's gonna be doing more Superman stuff. And I was like, that's good. Maybe I will watch like the next thing that he does because
Yeah.
he looks so much like Superman. But I really didn't want to watch any of the current like Superman stuff because I hate grayscale. I hate it. And it's so boring. The two things that I can't stand when it comes to like watching a movie are incredibly high contrast
Yeah.
and when
Like,
everything
like,
like
300
like 300
or yeah.
or when things are incredibly grayscale, everything's
You just don't like
gray.
Zack Snyder.
Yeah, I was kinda trying to dodge around it, but I'll just I can't stand Zack Schneider.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's good at doing, like, single shots, and
He would be great at directing a video game.
yeah, that's what Sucker Punch was, basically. It was a video game turned into a movie with no video game to
Yeah,
like, he just, like, was like, "What if this was a thing?"
I think he just needs to stick to a video game. I can't for my for me, just for me. I know there's so many people that are just like, I like that will kiss that man as soon as they see them, and that's fine. I don't like
Y
it.
You and
It's
I are
not
on the
for
same
me.
page. I have not liked, at beyond 300 and to some extent Watchmen, like, and even yeah, I have not liked really any of his
Like I
movies.
understand where like scenes involve muted colors because of like a tone of the
Yeah.
scene, but I can't sit and watch a whole movie like that. I can't do it. I
I
fall asleep. It's like and I just I don't know, I can't do that.
I could spend half an hour on his like just going through his Justice League movie
Yeah,
and specifically only talking about the way he handles Superman in that movie.
right.
And I am not a fan. I think his version, I it's 4 hours long, but I mostly enjoyed it. But the thing that really pulled me out of it was everything to do with Superman. And that is
Yeah,
my complaint with Man of Steel, with Batman v Superman. It's his version of Superman fucking sucks.
yeah,
And in particular, I my the reason I can tell you I could spend half an hour on that is specifically the costume change at the end of the movie. And I
oh,
don't
it's
know,
like
have
a
you
black suit, right?
right? And there is a black suit in the comics, but it's very specific to how it's used. And it's the way thematically it's used in this movie makes way less sense.
Yeah.
And I hate it. Because I was hoping like the end of the movie he would have a brighter costume, and he doesn't. And I
Yeah,
fucking hated it.
this gets I can't like here's the thing. I'm a Wes Anderson lady. I love a color palette,
Yeah,
particularly
I'm
color,
same.
and I like goofy symmetry sometimes. Um so like the I would say the most muted movie that I enjoy is Fargo.
Oh,
Like
I
and
don't think
Fargo
I've
like
seen that.
Fargo is my favorite movie. Like that and Clue. But
Clue is great.
Clue's iconic. Man, we should I have the DVD. We will watch Clue. That is exactly what we are going to do tomorrow. I've
Sounds fun.
decided I'll bring the DVD or you could come here. I don't know. What a time. That will happen. It's been decided. But n- like Fargo though, back to that. It's not the brightest colored movie because it's just like Midwest or Northwest? North Midwest? It's North Dakota. Um, it's it's North and South Dakota in
Look, we went to
winter.
school in America. We're not good at geography.
Well, because some people get mad when they're like, "Oh, that's not the Midwest," but it's like the Midwestern accent is like that Minnesota kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's that. And it's during the winter, so it's snowing all the time. And honestly, like the way that's done it makes it so striking because there's like really bright reds with like little details like the shovel or like that there's a little tiny like car shovel.
Mm.
And just like the characters are colorful, like with their personality. And like they do find moments of color that make sense. And like that great. Like the kind of I guess, neutral tones that they use there are so, like, striking and
Mhm.
great, or they're really comforting and, like, warm, and those
Yeah.
are great because there's just variety, but if you're just like, "It's gray every day, everyone's in a black or gray jumpsuit, and we all drive black SUVs," I can't watch it. I can't.
I can I you and I have talked about how both of us sort of fell out of video games for a long time
Yeah,
and are just recently getting back into them. I am way more drawn to the very colorful ones, and I
same.
can tell you when I think one of the things that maybe pulled me out of video games way earlier than I was kind of expecting to like fall out of video games was for a long period, I felt like every major game that came out looked like it was just gray. And
Yes.
that was I this so I remember specifically Arkham Asylum coming out
Yeah,
and
and,
just
like, you
thinking like
have the Joker and, like, Harley Quinn, they're in it, but it's just, like,
it's just
the
gray.
filter put on it, you don't get to see the greens and the reds in it
And
as
I
well as I would've liked.
when I was sick, I was watching a video trying to fall asleep and it was about a Spider-Man video game that came out I think around that same time, and I remember like thinking, because I recently played a bunch of like Spider-Man games and stuff like that, and being like, oh, there's a
Right.
lot of color in this. Maybe I was just like not thinking the right way. But then I was watching this video, and they were playing this Spider-Man game that came out around the same time, and it was all muted colors. And I was
Oh.
like, this game looks like shit to me. It's like, I'm sure people like it.
Well, and it also
I
could have been, like, at the time, to you, it was really bright and colorful, and then going back, you now have all these new things that are out that are super bright and colorful, and then you come back to it and you're like, "Oh, whoa, this is so different."
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, when the game came out, I remember thinking it looked like dark and muddy and stuff like that. And then
Okay.
playing other games and seeing how like colorful they were, I was like, "Oh, I must have been misremembering, because there's no way they would make a Spider-Man game look look so like it had a
Looks
fucking
like a
Instagram
noir
filter
film,
over
yeah.
it." Yeah, and they did. I watched this YouTube video and I was like, "No, this game looks like shit."
Oh,
And I'm
crazy.
sure it's fun and people seem to really like it. I One of the reasons I watched this video is because this person really liked that video game and they wanted to talk about why. And I like hearing why people like things. But
Yeah.
I had to close my eyes at one point because I was like, I just don't care what it looks like. I want to hear you talk about the good things. But okay.
Tell me about it. But yeah, so that was what you read.
Yeah. I have a bit of trivia to read you.
Trivia time.
Surf the web, surf the web. Shut up, Brock. We don't have time.
So this is a little different from when I go over your episodes. I tend to pull up the Life of Riley story, so that we can talk about the behind the scenes things that led to Ben Riley becoming the character that you're reading.
Yes.
The unfortunate part of that is when I'm talking about Peter, there's nothing to talk about, except I wanted to get into Daredevil and how he is shown in this particular series,
Okay, sure.
because we talk about the way he looks and the way that he faked his death. And Brian Cronin over at, I believe this was on CBR. Brian Cronin wrote "Remember to Forget" when Daredevil faked his death and got an armored costume. So I'm just going to read through snippets of this so that you get an idea of like sort of what Daredevil was going through, because I feel like it's weird to bring up the character and talk about the weird parts of his life and
Yeah.
then not actually get into here's why he is this way.
Okay, sure.
So this is all again quoting from Brian Cronin.
Okay.
Uh, as 1992 turned into 1993, we were now thick in the middle of the era of making dramatic changes to your characters, along with special covers, of course, to help raise sales. Just in 1992 to 1993 alone, there was Death and Return of Superman, Batman's back being broken, the Azrael Batman debuting, Emerald Twilight, Wolverine's adamantium getting torn out, Captain America giving out lectures on the ethics of being a superhero, Peter Parker's parents showing up alive, Mr. Fantastic seemingly being killed, and a lot of those stories were based on anniversaries, like the 30th anniversaries of characters like the X-Men and the Avengers.
Right.
Daredevil's 30th anniversary was coming up in 1994. So 1993 began a storyline for Daredevil called Fall from Grace, which was designed to give Daredevil his dramatic change and hopefully sell enough to keep Chichester on the title. That was the person
Okay.
who was writing it.
Right.
Daredevil battles several villains and ends up tearing his costume into shreds, so he decides to rebuild it with extra padding and some armor. That's where this costume comes from.
Sure.
Matt then learns that Ben Urich, who we talked about in
Reporter.
the previous episode, right?
Yes.
His former assistant stole notes about Matt being Daredevil and sold them to a newspaper, who then printed it all up, thus exposing Matt's identity to the public. Which
Ah.
I just want to interject, not the first or the last time this will happen. It's Matt's
Oh.
Matt's alter ego, his dual identity is garbage. there's a point in one of the comics I was reading recently where everyone's convinced he's Daredevil, and he pretty much like does everything. Like he gets arrested in the middle of doing Daredevil stuff and goes
Right.
to prison and all of the and he's like, no, I'm not Daredevil, and everyone's convinced he is, but he just kind of like again he finds a way to get out of it, and it's
Yeah.
so interesting to me that this keeps happening.
Poor guy. Can't get a
Uh,
break.
so Matt is then able to Daredevil proof his apartment before the police come because everyone's like, "Oh, we got to go check out this lawyer who's beating people up after hours." And the assistant is arrested for stealing the information, but none of this fully proves his innocence in the public's eye. Like
Sure.
everyone's still kind of like, "Hey, it's Daredevil." Matt then battles a demonic doppelganger of himself from the then recent Infinity War crossover event. So
Okay.
if Infinity War, if for the people who only know the movie,
Which is
the
me.
comic, yeah, the comic book is not at all like the movie. The
Okay.
movie is essentially uh, a weird adaptation of I forget the name of the particular comic, but it's like it's Thanos's mission to collect all of the Infinity Gems, and then in Infinity Gauntlet is sort of like the last 10 minutes of the Infinity War movie. Uh,
Sure.
and then Infinity War is way different and involves like many different aspects of like different characters coming together. Like Galactus gets involved, and there is a person who creates doppelgangers of like Spider-Man and Daredevil, but
Right.
they're weird demonic versions of them.
Okay.
So Matt battles this demonic doppelganger of himself. And when that doppelganger dies, Matt takes the opportunity to fake his death because the character looks just like him.
Right.
This lasts less than 2 years worth of stories. So he like fakes his death and he's like, I'm going to be someone entirely different. I'm just going to live as Daredevil and I'll maybe create another identity. But by Daredevil 353, Matt shows back up in court and reveals that S.H.I.E.L.D. had faked his death to protect him from the Kingpin. The issue also features a nod to Superman with a reporter named Lois calling her editor Perry about the big scoop. And
Oh.
that's how you wrap up that whole thing. It's
Okay.
it sounded like it was going to be far more interesting than it was. It's really like he just fucks his life up for 2 years worth of comic book stories, and then just kind of goes back to being Matt Murdock and apologizes to all of his friends, and they all let him off the hook.
Okay. Interesting.
So that's the weird little bit of trivia that I had for this episode. I hopefully will have some more fun stuff in the future.
I think compared to the last one you read, this is definitely like more straightforward. Um,
Yeah,
I I liked Nocturne. I thought she was a cool character. Maybe they'll come back. I don't know. And it was cool to see Daredevil. I like the angry accountant. I think this one was fine. I
yeah,
liked it. I liked it better
I
than the first run for sure.
I definitely did too. I was surprised at how much, and
And
I
I
will
just think
tell
the
you,
bird thing is hilarious. Like it's terrifying and hilarious.
the next storyline that I read, I've already finished. I'm doing my notes for it. I liked it even more than this one. It's
I liked the one that I read more than my first one too. I'm a little upset about it right now because there are just some huge things that just are not explained. Um,
I'm sure I'll be
and
able to help out with
yeah, they definitely we'll talk about them next episode.
that. We at least have so far in
But so far
all
things
of
are making sense. Like
they are.
if we just throw away and rearrange the first thing that we read to get, like the first thing that you read, as long as that gets rearranged in our
Yeah.
brains, everything pretty much makes sense right now.
Yeah, I think we're on a good path.
Yes.
And the only thing that is giving me, I'm curious to see how long this goes on.
Yes.
The only recurring female character we have is Mary Jane, and she's barely in the book.
I can I can we'll talk more about that next episode.
Okay.
There's maybe some saving there. I
Okay,
had
cool.
some hunches, and some of my hunches are thankfully correct. Um, so that is very validating and probably makes it more interesting. So, we'll see, you know? It'll be fine. We're gonna keep on keeping on.
Good.
Yeah.
So you can find more information at comicallypedantic.com. Um, this is normally where I would say you can follow us on Twitter. I think I'm getting rid of my Twitter.
Okay.
I am not happy with it right now. And so by the time this episode comes out, it might be long gone. But
Goodbye, Twitter.
you can follow us on Instagram by searching at Pedanticast on both platforms. New episodes come out most Sundays on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and at comicallypedantic.com. If you have any comments or questions, you can send them in text or audio recording to comicallypedantic@gmail.com. Please indicate if you'd like your name or question read on the air. Also, don't forget, we still own www.fuckcomicsgate.com. You
Yeah!
can donate directly to the internet, the Games and Online Harassment Hotline. You can donate directly to them, and you can leave them a nice little message about all the good work that they are doing. I
Yes.
will be adding a link to that to our link tree. We will be back soon with another deep dive into the world of comics. In fact, I believe Corinne,
I'm
you will be
taking over
walking us
again.
through. You'll be walking us through the web of life, right?
Yep, I'm gonna teach y'all about the birds and the bees and all the things that happen in life, in this big old web that we all live in. That's what it's
Until
gonna be, not really, but it's actually a lot more straightforward than you think it would be, given the title. We'll talk about it next time.
until then, you can find more exciting adventures at your local comic shop.
Do you know the song? Oh God, who are the guys that sing the YMCA?
The Village People. I
The
love the
Village
Village People.
People. So they have a song. It's called "In the Navy" because for some reason the
Oh yeah,
Village
I love that song.
we've been singing it to our cat,
It checks out.
and we just changed the words to fit songs about Oliver, and then I have him dance, and it's really good. He'll do like the claps. He's very good at it.